Here to respond is one half of the Libertarian Party ticket, Bill Weld, Gary Johnson's running mate, former governor of Massachusetts. Governor Weld, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Jake. Pleasure.
So you've said a lot of nice things about Hillary Clinton lately, and you've made it clear that you consider Donald Trump a clear and present danger to the nation. I know you want the Libertarian Party to get that 5% it needs in order to go forward and continue to be a thriving American political party. But I have to say, sometimes it sounds like you want to endorse Clinton. Am I reading you wrong?
Well, you're correct, Jake, that I do want the Libertarian Party to get over 5% in the vote, because that would give the Libertarian Party a permanent seat at the table in our ongoing national political dialogue. And I do think one of the issues in this campaign has been, do you like the two-party monopoly, the R party and the D party, in Washington, D.C.? We don't like that monopoly. That's the monopoly that kept us out of the debates and, deprived us of the chance to run the table. Having said all of that, I do see a big difference between the two other candidates, Mr. Trump and Mrs. Clinton. I do think that Mr. Trump, with all deference, is totally unfit to be president of the United States. I don't think he has the stability to hold up under the constant pressure and criticism that any president is going to face every day that he or she is in office. I don't think he has the temperament to deal with all the many, many stakeholders at home and abroad that any president is going to have to do it. And, I think it's a measure of how much our politics has sunk this year that when I say anything even faintly civil about Mrs. Clinton, there are shrieks of outrage. How could he say that? Doesn't he realize that she's the enemy because she's on another ticket? Well, she's not the enemy. She's a perfectly reputable, professional, responsible candidate for president of the United States and deserves to be treated as such.
It's just an odd position you're in, I guess, because you're on one of the tickets and yet you're saying something nice. And you're reality-based. You know that Gary Johnson is not going to be the next president of the United States. You're not going to be the next vice president of the United States. And in some ways, it might seem to some critics that you're trying to have it both ways, not endorsing Clinton, but you want no responsibility if you and Governor Johnson tip the election in any way to Donald Trump. Am I being unfair?
Well, I am on the ticket, and tens of thousands of people in the Libertarian ranks have worked very hard to try to get us to this point, which is a high point to date for the Libertarian Party. You never know where a vote is coming from. My belief is that the Libertarian Party pulls substantially more from Mr. Trump than from Mrs. Clinton. I'm well aware there was an earlier media boomlet for the idea that, oh, no, all our voters were millennials and we were pulling millennials from Mrs. Clinton. That's not my understanding of what the detailed polling shows. But, we've got a perfect right to try to draw our vote just as everyone else does. But I have made plain my view of the two candidates. And frankly, I think, Mrs. Clinton recently has been receiving a pretty raw deal from people trying to fan the flames that there's some huge FBI new investigation of her email server. And, there are obviously Republican members of Congress who are in that hunt. It does appear that there may be some disgruntled FBI agents who appear to think that somehow they've been cheated of their prey. That's not how the system is supposed to work. And I think Jim Comey is a real good guy, real good reputation in the Justice Department for a long time. But I do think he made a mistake sending that letter to Congress, which is essentially the equivalent of a press release, not quite saying we're reopening the investigation, because that was not done, but certainly fanning the flames and jumping into the middle of a presidential election with 10 or 11 days to go. That's not what the FBI is supposed to be all about. And it was just a 180-degree violation of long-standing practice and principles of the Justice Department.
Well, Governor, are you saying that you think that the FBI director should step down or should resign?
No, I'm not saying that. And, I think one thing that's happened, everyone is so anxious because this is such a watershed election. It's a conscience election. Everyone's going to remember who they voted for this year. I think the stakes are so high because the standing of the two major candidates is so disparate. It'll be like, everyone remembers where they were when they heard about 9/11. Everyone who is old enough remembers where they were when President Kennedy was shot. I think people are going to look back on this election and really reflect on the vote that they took. And I think it's a year when people have to think for themselves and cast a vote of conscience.
Let me ask you about the state of New Hampshire. You're from neighboring Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Take a look at this poll from WBUR-TV. It shows Trump 40%, Clinton 39%, Johnson, Weld 10%. So you are having an impact on who might win that key battleground state in New Hampshire and those 4 crucial electoral votes. Are you comfortable with the fact that support for you might tip New Hampshire and thus the presidency to one of the candidates? And since you are not comfortable with Donald Trump, what if it is tipping it towards Donald Trump?
Well, that's in a way conjectural, but the answer is, yeah, I am comfortable with us pursuing the best we can get as a libertarian ticket. You know, I remind you and the audience that we are fiscally responsible and socially inclusive. We think that's the best combination of positions, and it's one reason why I do think it's important to have the libertarians have a seat at that table in Washington. It's not like we would be a threat to the stability of the republic. We don't have a parliamentary system. We have a fixed term system in the United States. So you're not going to have an inability because of extra parties to get to a decision on the presidency. But I think the Republican Party has a lot to learn from us about being socially inclusive. I think the Democratic Party has a lot to learn from us about being fiscally responsible and balancing the budget, which we have pledged to do in our first 100 days. So I think it'd be a long, cool drink of water for Washington to have us there. So I don't feel at all apologetic about us trying to get there.
All right. Governor Weld, good luck on Tuesday. Thank you so much, sir.